Hello and welcome to everyone. I'll just give it a moment or two for people to join to get the audio connection set up. Great to see so many people joining already. Welcome to day one of the Net Zero Virtual Festival brought to you by the installer. Lots of fantastic discussions and talks and panels and debates and things all week that we've been hosting. And today, this afternoon, right now, we are with a wonderful panel of experts here. I want to thank, we've got Yvonne Orgill from, who's the Managing Director of the Unified Water Label, Paul McGuire from Mira Showers, who's the installer communications there, and Paul Harmer, who's the lead technical consultant of the CIPHE. And today we're going to be getting into the discussion around the role of water efficiency in the race to decarbonisation. So big thanks here to Mira Showers for sponsoring this talk, and also thanks to Yvonne and Paul for joining us today. Just before we get started, we have a quick question for you all in the audience, which is, how often do your consumers request water saving products? Is this something that's really even on their radar at the moment, or something that, to be honest, people don't really think about? Because this year the water industry actually became the sector in the UK to commit to zero carbon emissions by 2030, which is a fantastic and laudable goal, but we've still got significant water leakages. We've seen in the news recently, it was 3 billion litres a day, and actually, it's the amount of water we're wasting per person is even on the increase at the moment. So presumably reducing water wastage must be quite high on the agenda. But in terms of those poll results, which have just come in, I'll share them with you now. And obviously no one is saying that consumers are always asking. About half are perhaps sometimes asking the question about water saving, and half it doesn't look like it's even on the agenda. So I'm going to ask my first question to Yvonne, and I encourage you all in the audience to post your questions in the chat or on the Q&A feature here, and we'll do our best to get through as many as we can. But Yvonne, could you do you really think the importance of the message about water efficiency is being perhaps drowned out by the focus on carbon emissions?
To a certain extent, because consumers haven't recognised the link between saving water or reducing water waste, saving energy, which automatically then reduces carbon emissions. 40% of carbon emissions emitted by the UK are from the existing building stock, and 60% of homes are probably way older than we would expect. So yeah, I think the message is, pardon the pun, diluted, but
there's going to be a few of those, isn't there?
I think there will be. But I've been in the industry 35 years, in the bathroom industry, and I came across some minutes from the association way back in 1890 something, and they were talking water efficiency in them days as well. So we haven't really moved much forward, have we? But back to your question, yeah, I think we are a little diluted. And the fact is that the Green Homes energy vouchers didn't include water efficiency, which was really disappointing for the sector. So come on, government, you've got to do a bit more.
So it's down to them. Yeah, I mean, like Paul Harmer from the CIPHE, is it something that the industry or the government need to put together, like water efficiency with carbon emissions as a package?
Yeah, so I mean, both are intrinsically connected. I know, for example, when we move towards a more decarbonised heating and hot water system, if we can use less water during our showering, then we will obviously clearly save on energy usage. So they sort of run together. So I'd like to see, as we educate, I know we're sort of looking at a low temperature heating and hot water course, the reduction in the increase of new technology, new innovation in showering, and I'll be interested to hear what Mira have to say a bit later on some of their technology, but giving that consumer the same experience, but actually at the same time saving energy, if that makes sense, would help us in the designing of our hot water systems. So as we will probably see more cylinders being installed with the electrification of heat, could that innovation and that reduction in water affect the way we size our storage hot water systems?
Yeah, because it seems to be a big debate, doesn't it? I was going to bring in Paul from Mira. You know, would you be expected to turn customers, you know, away when they want like quite a legal product installing, and someone else might do it if you don't? You know, what's...
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult choice for installers. Very similar, if you like, to the same as the manufacturers. You know, when there's a commercial interest and the future of the business is at stake, it's very difficult not to offer something if somebody else will. And I think certainly from an installer's perspective, all that, you know, we can kind of similar to what we do as a manufacturer really is to just give the consumer the choice. So whilst, you know, somebody else will ultimately always sell them the alternative, it's about helping consumers make an informed decision really, giving them the choice and explaining the benefits of some of the eco products. And, you know, we do exactly the same as that from a manufacturer standpoint, whereby, you know, we have a range of eco products available, mixers which are specifically targeted for eco situations, with flow regulators. Similarly, we've got electric showers which inject air into the passageway of water in order to boost the flow rate as well. So again, you know, it's really about education, not least from a manufacturer's standpoint, but also from an installer's standpoint as well, in order to let the consumer make that informed decision.
Okay, go on, Yvonne.
I was just going to say, I've just seen a question come across the screen, and I just want to see if this is relevant for the zero carbon. Are we missing a trick here? I mean, the question came in is we shouldn't be reducing how much water we use. We should be looking at how do we reuse the water again? And it's the grey water, the rainwater recycling aspects that perhaps we should be researching a little bit further. And therefore, the choice remains out into the marketplace, but we're reusing that water. I know there's been many discussions on grey water for flushing WCs. I'm a little bit sceptic on that one, only because there's lack of research. I am a bit of a clean freak. Don't know whether I fancy using the WC if it's not been cleaned properly in my head. And the COVID-19 is all about sanitation. And so therefore I'm a little wary, but I think it's a great opportunity that we should be looking further into, and perhaps Paul can come in on that one. Paul Harman.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's perfect. Reuse what we've got, but the key one there is safely. You know, we've got to make sure that water's safe for the consumer. So I remember rainwater harvesting many years ago coming in, and there was a few problems out there how it's installed. So again, this has got to be driven heavily by skills to make sure people are up to scratch and qualified to install these products. But definitely reuse what we've got, but safely.
And is this coming into sort of the water companies? Is that, you know, we need to be talking to them more about this? Would you say, Yvonne? I
don't think it's one particular sector of the industry. I'm a huge believer that everybody has to play a part, and therefore you need government, you need standards people, you need industry experts, installers, because it is, as Paul's just said, it's a whole system. It isn't just the tap or the shower at the end of the system. It's about getting the right balance, and at the moment we're very prone in the UK to one size fits all, but it's not the case. One size does not fit all, because our water pressures and systems are different up and down the country. So therefore we should be investigating and researching this in a lot more positive way of how we can have a complete system of reuse of water.
I was going to say then that we talk about the outlets. The actual system itself is generally sort of forgot about. You know, just simple things, sort of insulating your cold water pipe work, for example. You know, only earlier today, my wife was having a go at me for running the tap too long. I like a nice cold drink. So you can imagine if you're running your cold pipework through the house, it's going to take time to get, if it picks up the heat within the building, you're going to have to wait and waste water until you actually get that temperature right. So the same for, we look at the decarbonisation of heat. Hot water returns in areas where you've got long runs, insulating your hot water pipework as well. So again, you're not waiting forever to your tap to get warm. So in the water regulations, it talks about making sure that each outlet's 50 degrees within 30 seconds. So the way we site pipework in buildings, cold to hot, again for water safety reasons, because water safety and water efficiency and the decarbonisation all come together. And it's having that complete system approach, understanding how all these things interact, which is why this subject is definitely a really good one to debate.
And a question actually from the audience I'll just pick up in here, which is, yeah, are there any laws on water efficiency in the UK and Europe? You know, there's lots of voluntary schemes, but is there anything to force manufacturers or designers to use only water efficient products, as there are, I believe, in North America currently?
Well, there's a mixed bag here, Ben. We've got water regulations in the UK, which do set WCs can flush on no more than 6 litres. That's the current target at the moment. The laws in the States are mixed. Some of the United States have differing laws, so it's not compulsory water efficiency. In Australia, I think we have the Wells scheme, whereby you have to register the products, but they're not necessarily water efficient. And this is why I go back to one size doesn't fit all. We should be encouraged through behaviour change. Manufacturers have been absolutely great over the last decade, introducing more efficient products that deliver the performance, but use less finite resource. And therefore, we need to be pushing and incentivise people to flip out the old products and put in the new, latest, innovative product. But it has to be installed professionally. There's no point in having good quality product that delivers water efficiency that's then badly installed and consumers use it incorrectly. You know, we've got a growing number of consumers that have 3 showers a day. Why? They use toilets 15 times a day, and it isn't for body waste. It's because it's a waste paper bin. There's all this bad habits that we have in the UK and in other countries. I've seen it right across the globe, that we need to influence change. Behaviour change is key because the manufacturers have put the products out there.
I mean, that's a really good point. You know, you're talking about WCs, because if we look back before 1986, they were selling cisterns, single flush 9 litres. We then moved in from 1986, the regs changed, and we moved into sort of 7.5 litres. And then 1999, a dual flush 6 litres. There's a lot of, I mean, we talk about the zombie boilers. I don't know if anyone's heard of that, the old floor standing boilers, they call them zombie boilers. Could we call these zombie toilets? I don't know, but 9 litre flushes out there compared to 6. So what can we do with those? You know, you talk about upgrading, maybe. We could look at putting new flush valves in, dual flush. So there's things that we can do with what's out there just as much as all the new equipment that's out there as well, making sure when we replace it, because there's still some of them old coloured bathroom suites around, aren't there, today? The avocado.
Let me just ask another question here to the audience, everyone listening here, actually. You know, do you as an installer promote water saving products? Is that something you do regularly? It's I think it's anonymous, so don't worry, you don't have to say you do. Looks like I'll just give it another few seconds for that to roll in, and I might ask the panelists to comment on that. We've had a good 70% of people voted now. Interesting. So I get, you know, it looks like just over a third always do, and then probably 2/3 between either it's perhaps not relevant or do sometimes. I mean, is that what you'd expect sort of to see? I don't know, Paul, McGuire, did you train installers? Is that something you focus on?
Certainly when it comes down to the installer, you know, our research tells us kind of quite how influential they are. You know, so much so I think 68% of consumers are likely to take the advice of their installer than any other source. And I think, you know, in the vast majority, installers are well trained, they're well experienced, well up to date on water regulations, as much as any other kind of legislation that's out there. I do think sometimes it's about kind of encouraging really, you know, an awareness. And whilst they do recommend it, I think there's probably a little bit more, even from our side, from a manufacturer's perspective, to help installers to kind of really sell the benefits of more sustainable water consumption. Certainly what we're seeing kind of from an awareness perspective is when awareness is created, it is, you know, almost certainly acted upon more so than it would have done ordinarily. You know, with the advent of water meters and smart meters, we definitely see that awareness as you start to look at digital showers, for instance, with reporting capability, the ability to set maximum flow rates and sharing durations specifically. We then start to get those better behaviours, as it were, from consumers as well, purely because they've seen it.
I was going to ask about sort of technology and IoT devices and things like that. Is that like, so I can see exactly how many minutes and how many litres of water I would use in the shower. But what part does that sort of, you know, connectivity, that sort of intelligence, that sort of data have to play?
I think it's certainly going to become a large part of kind of sharing and water delivery functions and manufacturers. You know, 2018 saw the launch of our first app-enabled shower. The ability to set time, set durations, to set presets has been a large leap forward when it comes to kind of domestic water consumption. But we're starting to see as well, kind of in our commercial brands, you know, that carryover really of commercial applications, duty flushing, disinfectant cycles, all things which can be set using building management systems or inbuilt apps within the product. We'll definitely see the migration of that over to more domestic products, I'm certain.
Okay.
I was just jump in there, Ben, if that's all right.
Please do.
I think as we move towards a more decarbonised future, especially on the heating system, on the building, we're going to need to see more of a co-design process between the installer and the consumer. We will not have the sort of ability just to, we need a bit more thought in what we put in. So we're going to have to sit down and talk to the consumer and find out their behaviours. I think that will encourage, and it's a good intervention for installers to engage with the consumer, give them some confidence that they understand their needs, and actually help to build a system. So I think we could start to see a lot more encouraging signs of installers and consumers engaging on water efficiency, definitely. And I think, as you say, the technology, if you can see what you're using or wasting, you're more likely to react, aren't you, and do something. It's going to play on your mind a bit more.
I think, Paul, to carry on from what you've just said there is, we've got over 5 million households in the UK that are in fuel poverty. Obviously, energy and water are inextricably linked. To the educated industry gurus like yourself and I, but to ordinary people in the street, they don't link it. And is water too cheap? I don't know, because it's cheap to some people, but if you're in energy or water poverty, then it's not too cheap. And government should be coming up, or the water utilities driven by Ofwat here, should be coming up with a system that enables you to get so much free, and then you pay more for what you use. A bit like the car industry, really, isn't it? They don't stop you buying the fuel guzzling 4x4s, but you know you've got to pay more for it. And is that where behaviour change has got to start, is by addressing the cost, the perception that water comes out of the sky for free, and we seem to have a lot, not in the UK, it's just grey. And therefore, once we've addressed fuel poverty and energy and water poverty, then we can move on to having the smart systems in the home. But if you can't afford what you've already got today, there's no point in having a smart system that you can't afford to install. So there's finding that balance, again, back to one size doesn't fit all.
Yeah, I mean, Ben, we're talking about the push from government. What can government do? And it's a really difficult one for government to push this through. Obviously, it's so intrinsically part of the consumer's behaviours and their needs and comfort. But obviously, it's as I was going back to what Yvonne said, it's difficult to put it in as a forceful thing because there are vulnerable people out there. So, you could come up with an idea of you get so much up to a certain point and it'll cost you X, and then your tariff changes and it could become more expensive. So, it may deter people, but the argument is, well, what about the vulnerable in society? What about those who've got arthritis that might need loads of baths to bring themselves back to life, their body? We've got to be, wherever you turn one way, we affect another. So it's a really difficult challenge for government, in my opinion.
I'd definitely echo that, Paul. I think kind of from our experience, we operate, quite significant within the local authority and housing association markets, and to kind of potentially disadvantage somebody who's so reliant upon watering, bathing kind of facilities, there is a real danger there of marginalising people by kind of implementing things like that. And I think we're all in agreement there's no kind of one size fits all. I think it is almost kind of being aware of all of the potential knock-on effects, that being kind of one of the more concerning for sure.
And I want to just put with you, Paul, just move on, because we got a question in beforehand this webinar as well about the role of technology companies in promoting certain types of products as well, right? So like you've got your sort of high volume shower pumps or unvented high pressure services, and that obviously goes quite against this message around efficiency. Maybe you could respond to that.
Yeah, certainly. I think it falls kind of very much into the same vein as an installer choice. Certainly sympathise from an installer perspective, because we face very similar kind of circumstances as manufacturers, whereby, in order to remain competitive and generate the revenue that we all require, we need to provide the customer choice just as much as an installer would with their installer services. So it is very challenging. But I think, again, the development of our products has led to kind of giving customers choice. And it is that aspect whereby by introducing eco modes, time settings, and the ability to report on their water consumption with the use of apps and reporting functionality, and they can at least make that informed decision. But certainly, we do see on the more aspirational products, the high performance factors, but equally, I'm really keen to stress not just Mira, but obviously our competitors as well. There's a vast array of different, more eco-friendly and sustainable sharing and water delivery systems which comply with Part G, even the most recent amendments with flow regulators in there to minimise that usage to 110 litres a day.
And do you see, is that, Yvonne, to you, is that actually more like regulation around providing the information or the transparency? Is that part of the government role now?
Industry's already got the solutions through the unified water label. 161 brands, 12,500 registered products, cleansed annually. But it's behaviour change. Really, this is where I think government really should be putting their money. Because if we lose consumers at the beginning of the water efficiency, energy efficiency journeys, it's going to be very difficult to get them back. Manufacturers are doing the technology. Manufacturers are doing the market transformation, but without the incentive to swap out the old for the new, then we're not going to get very far. We're going to have these same conversations in another 10 years' time.
So sort of behavioural change, nudges, is there anything else in terms of how do you get people to just take that small step on to be on the journey? Because then perhaps that leads to, being able to push the agenda a bit further.
I think if we take the fundamental, we could live without most things in the world. We can't live without water. And water is the element to, and I do apologise for my dog barking in the background. I'm not sure you can hear it. But it is important that the consumer understands how much water they're using, because if you ask somebody in the street, they wouldn't have a clue. So it's about education. It's about the nudge through the water utilities. We all get a bill 2-3 times a year through nudging. But we need to get into the schools and educate people. We need to get into the colleges to educate the plumbers of tomorrow, all about systems, water efficiency, energy efficiency, and carbon reductions. Otherwise, we won't be here.
It's a challenging sell for an installer, I think. You know, 4 installers quoting, only one is pushing water efficiency. The other 3 are pushing high-powered, lovely comfort experiences. What will the consumer think about that? You know, will they question it and say, well, why are only you asking me this? So I think we need across the board. I think for consumers to react to installers, if it's a common, consistent message coming from installers, they'll probably take it on board, or it'll help anyway. But
Yeah.
Installers as well. Sorry, Paul. I think installers as well, it is a very challenging message. I think 2019, there was a report released that only 50% of households had water meters fitted in 2017. So with that mismatch there for installers to go up against, that message is only being heard by half the people when they're trying to obviously explain the benefits of more sustainable water delivery. And I do think it is that continual challenge. There's more against the installer currently than there is behind them.
Yeah. And what is happening with the nationwide sort of rollout of water meters? Is there anything happening with that?
I believe it's on the increase. I believe that they have a program. They're never going to get 100% water meters in certain places, but they are increasing it. But when you see that their leakage rate is 23 to 25% of water that's pumped through it, then I'm back with Paul from Mira here that consumers aren't going to be interested till you've fixed your leaks. So if there's metering on the increase but the leakage rate isn't going to go down, then consumers are likely to say, well, why should I bother?
Yeah, I saw an interesting fact then online. I think it might be the Energy Saving Trust website, I think, maybe. That said if everyone reduced their showering by 1 minute for every shower, collectively would save 215 million a year on energy bills. I mean, again, you know, you read these facts, you read these stats, but it's quite huge. You know, I know it's over the whole population, but just as an individual, how much would that relate to carbon emissions? £250 million.
Paul, the Unified Water Label did a research project with Keele University, a leading environmental university in the UK. And they said if everybody took one minute off their shower, they would save 7% of the UK's water use over an annual. So that then equates to how much carbon?
Yeah, of course it does. Yeah, and there's your behaviour. Simple changes, simple interventions can make a big difference, probably collectively as a country. And maybe that's a government thing. Maybe government need to nudge people a bit more of an awareness campaign. Would that be a good idea for government to put their money in awareness campaign, communication?
That's one of the large problems, though, with kind of overall engagement. I think the Love Water initiative a while back, which was kicked off by Ofwat, I think there's 1,000 followers on Twitter. I think that's indicative, really, in terms of, you know, an initiative like that compared with one of the many other things which people are very quick to follow. It kind of really illustrates, you know, how unexciting and how uninteresting people are finding it, and we need to kind of find a way really to change that dialogue.
Yeah, well, one thing that I also read or heard not long ago, I mean, like the water companies will send out shower heads, low flow shower heads for consumers, just they'll have a little spurt. And I couldn't believe it. So they're fitting them on electric showers, and then it's causing the showers to fail. They're causing scalding water to come out the shower. I'm not laughing, by the way. It just doesn't make sense. You put a water efficient product on, and the showers are designed to work at higher flow rates, so they're getting water's too hot coming out. So again, wherever you make one change, it can affect, you know, it can cause an effect somewhere else, and yeah, it's it can be quite challenging.
And on just like a slight segue, but on kind of fitting products and going back a bit to the technology point, Paul McGuire, like, do you think are consumers ready for you know, some of the technology that we see coming out for connected showers and for, you know, hybrid water products and things? Do we see demand for that?
you know, we're certainly undoubtedly as a nation, if not globally, a lot more digitally acceptable now. So, you know, the same as most technologies, there's always going to be the kind of the early adopters with stuff like this. But I certainly think if it's communicated from a, you know, what's in it for me aspect, there's all of the kind of the functionality that comes with products like these, the digital products, digital sharing, etc., that we and other manufacturers produce. But I think there's almost that knock-on effect. It's almost that so what, because at the minute it's very much driven and received by people who want and are interested in that technology. I think it's really perhaps as an industry that we work together really to highlight the benefits of how, you know, this can be a lot more beneficial and on a broader sense.
So we're sort of coming towards the end. I've got all sorts of questions I might run through that the audience have been sending in. So I'm going to just run through a couple. Some we've probably touched upon, but maybe there's an additional angle that we want to talk about. We've got a couple, you know, around the theme of the wastage that we've seen from water suppliers. So, you know, surely it is up to the water utilities and suppliers to adjust their huge wastage through their broken networks. And there was a question as well, I think, about whereas it was sort of about underground water leaks, which are believed to be substantial. So, you know, is there any action being taken around that? What action should be taken around that?
Ofwat have got targets for the water utilities that they have to meet, otherwise they're penalised. That goes back to somebody's comment earlier that, you know, hitting them in the pocket. But they are addressing it, but it's a jigsaw. There are so many different things that are happening, initiatives. And for me, we ought to learn by the failures of other campaigns. We need to have a cohesive message. I think Paul from Mira said this. There's so many mixed messaging going out there. You know, we're blaming water utilities. I think everybody's got to take some aspect for change in the future. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. You know, I think one of the questions that flew across my screen was water regulations. We have them, but nobody adheres to them. We need to put these things right. Otherwise, we're not going to have sufficient water.
There's definitely some retrospective application of that, Yvonne. I think we see the adoption of you know, more sustainable sharing technologies a lot higher amongst new build. We work closely with new build and house builders to design, develop products specifically which help them meet water regulations and Part G as well. I think if that were to be applied retrospectively, there'd certainly be some benefits where that's applicable and suitable, where we'd start to see the results.
I've got another interesting question actually about the role that, you know, building companies should have, you know, new build homes or retrospective, but to deliver more sort of water saving products, perhaps as part of the whole role, individual rainwater recycling, important role to play.
They are one of the roles, yeah, definitely. Code for Sustainable Homes was a driver to get water usage down from 150 litres per person down to 125, 105 in Wales. So there has been movement on this. A number of the house builders have pledged over the last couple of months zero carbon. So we are seeing that they are engaging in new build, but unfortunately, new build is a very small percentage. It is the existing building stock that we need to address. And that is where the challenge is. Drainage, systems, all of it. We've got to change it somehow. And you'll only change it with incentive program that's got to be driven by government and water utilities.
Okay. I mean, I'm going to go to Paul Harmer. Are there any practical measures that some people, installers who might be listening, can do to reduce the amount of water that their customers will consume?
Well, obviously, on new installations, the installation of the pipework I mentioned earlier, making sure the siting of equipment in relation to the outlets, all those sort of things. When you're working in a house and a customer might not want to replace the suite, could you advise them on upgrading that old 9-litre system to something with dual flush, lower volumes, all those sort of things? Yeah. Okay. Simple measures on the installation.
Yeah, for sure. And then Paul, I might go around and ask all of our panelists to share a couple of sort of final key takeaways to sort of wrap up, like a message you'd like to sort of leave us with. Paul McGuire, what would be your, and maybe even what would be your one wish, if you could have one wish for this in the future? Is it something for government or something for every individual?
I think it's definitely a joined up approach, but certainly I think something whereby there was a level playing field, really. Level playing field for installers as much as there was for manufacturers. I think certainly where there's customers and there's a demand for more sustainable products, mentioned earlier we work closely with house builders. I do think it should be an aspect whereby, much the same as tiered billing systems, there's almost kind of a tiered reward scheme, tiered incentivization at least, whereby the manufacturer and therefore the installation of more sustainable products is rewarded as opposed to being penalised. And I think that level playing field, it would apply specifically and benefit more so installers than anybody else. And then the consumer just as a byproduct reaps the rewards then.
That's great. Yeah. There was actually one more question from the audience I'd love to just place to you there, actually, which is about, can you talk about any sort of specific ways that the technology, IoT, etc., might save water? Is that just about an auto start? Is it about built-in timers?
I think the application of automation and presets, it is where, we've talked about the preservation of water potentially being a drawback or for certain people who need it for their well-being or they've got certain specific needs. And I think, having those presets, it means then who can afford to use less time in the shower or running bath, for instance, can make that decision to do so, whilst not to the detriment of other people that perhaps need that extra water.
Sorry,
Paul, go.
No, I thought you'd finished. Sorry, mate. No, one of the most exciting things that I've been looking at, and we're about to do an article in our next journal, is on reducing water consumption but maintaining that consumer experience, which is critical. It's this air injection into the shower heads. Can it deliver that same experience of 10 litres but only using 6 litres? So again, anything that can save water but maintain that experience is got to be the one, which is a very difficult innovation challenge. But that's one technology I'm quite excited about to learn more about.
And that's one such way, Paul, that kind of, we've certainly explored and innovated in that front. We do have an electric shower with air boost technology, which injects that air to boost the flow of water. And I think it is exploring those alternatives, almost different spray experiences that deliver the same sensation and experience whilst using a lot less water.
Which will hopefully, well, maybe, if you look at the design of a hot water storage, might reduce the storage volume, saving space, saving energy. But again, this is what innovation is all about. It's testing the boundaries.
Great. That's one potentially really exciting avenue there. Yvonne, if you had one wish.
I think my wish, Ben, is for education. Paul from Kohler Mira has mentioned the technology. Paul from CIPHE has talked about the installer's role. And for me, with the Unified Water Label, we are the education element of it. We've got the scheme. Yes, it's voluntary, but it's moving more and more into the realms of positive mandatory labelling. What we don't want to see is choice removed because of the demographics that we've already highlighted throughout the conversation. So we have the solution. And for academia to get involved in a complex discussion such as this, plumbing systems, water pressures, consumer behaviour, it's not one size fits all. So leave us alone. We're doing well. We've got all the ingredients. We just need the incentive push, and government can provide that.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to ask the audience for that one final question, actually, which is whether government should enforce installers to fit water-saving products in existing homes. And let's just see where our audience are with this. So I'll just give it another sort of few seconds to roll in. Just over half of people have voted. We'll give it a couple more seconds. And the results are quite conclusive and quite conclusive. Just over 3/4 of us think that the government have a role to play in enforcing installers to fit water saving products. Would you challenge that, Yvonne? Was your pitch for more education, or do you think it is a balance between the two of creating that level playing field?
If the government enforces installers to only fit water efficiency product, and dependent on the level of where they set the backstop, so for instance, a shower that delivers no more than 8 litres, and the consumer is dissatisfied with that particular brand, and they start to fiddle with the brand and take out flow regulators, etc., we are just opening up a huge issue that could put consumers' health and safety at severe risk. You've got to have a sensible approach. If that's what is required, it's sensible approach, getting all the experts involved. We don't want to be swapping water efficiency for Legionella, Pseudomonas, and electric showers blowing up because we've been fiddling with them.
That's a great example, just to say there, Ben. Like, for example, in new build, they designed the hot water cylinder for the low flow rate. Someone comes along and puts a takes the flow regulator out. Suddenly, they're not satisfied with the amount of hot water they're getting. So, I totally agree with Yvonne there. We definitely need to, at a high level or top level, join together on this one, unified, and at the bottom sort of grassroots level, the installer consumer engagement. I'd like to see that a lot more now, which I think we will.
Is that your sort of wish? I was about to come to you there.
Yeah,
Paul.
I think it's understanding the consumer's needs. I'm not saying installers don't do it, but I think it's critical. It's like when you develop a product, you need to understand the pains and gains of your customer before you develop the product, rather than develop the product and just give it to them, force it down their throat. So, yeah, talking to that customer, for me, it's got to form part of our education.
Yeah, fair enough. There's actually one brilliant question that is just going. I've got to ask you. It's the final thing, I do promise. But what's your favourite piece of kit that you have visited in your homes to save water? Does anyone want to take that one?
Yeah, mine would be the product that I've been alluding to. Quite passionate about it personally, but yeah, it's just that ability to have presets. So kind of everybody assumes the fact that I work at Mira Showers that showers. I've got a little boy and it's all about baths in our house.
Right.
The ability to run a bath off my phone, know that it's going to be the perfect temperature and the perfect depth for him, and leave that bath while it's bedtime and all the rest of it, brushing teeth. I think that's the bit. I know how much that bath's going to be filled, and I'm never going to overfill it.
Yeah,
so that's my responsible water consumption.
Very responsible. Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Paul.
Yeah, so same with me. I've got a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, and the 13-year-old spends forever in the shower trying to get him out. And I say we've got the same thing, that visual of how long you've been in there, how much water you're using. It does make a difference. It makes my son think a bit. It's work. So yeah, that's where we are on that one.
Fair enough. Great. Yvonne, final word.
I have a dual flush WC and I have an eco shower timer. So I do practice what I preach.
Excellent.
I am very water conservationist. I don't fill the kettle. I put only enough to boil for the cup of tea. But it is about education, and education takes a generation to change. We've got to start soon.
Brilliant. And with that, I'd just like to thank you all for joining us. I'd love to thank our panelists, to Yvonne, Paul Harmer and Paul McGuire. Thank you so much for your time, for coming on this webinar here, and thanks everyone for joining. And there were so many questions today. We couldn't get through them all, but we will, do our best to get back to you afterwards. There'll be a recording of this panel as well, which we'll share afterwards, and there are plenty more discussions and debates to continue this week. So hopefully you'll be able to join some of these future conversations, and we'll be back, I think, with the CIPHE on Friday as well. So just another plug for that session there. But with that, thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for joining, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.